Hey everyone, welcome to the Camino Cafe. I am so glad that you are here watching us on our YouTube channel, or maybe you're listening to us on our podcast. And you just heard our new intro song. We've only had it for the last couple of episodes, and I'm super excited tonight that the pilgrim who donated that song for us to use is here with me tonight, Jackson Maloney. And I met Jackson a couple of months ago. And heard his music and kind of reached out to him and said, hey, what would you think? And he was so gracious and offered and said, yeah, hey, let's use it. So Jackson, welcome to the Camino Cafe again.
Thank you, Leigh. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, thank you. So I know where you are, but let's let all of our viewers and listeners know what part of the world are you sitting in tonight?
I am in Hygiene, Colorado, so it's about 20 minutes north of Boulder, right on the Front Range, like right in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, beautiful. I've been to Boulder, but I don't think I've ever been to Hygiene.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't. It's a very small town. It's like a one-stop town.
All right.
So,
Now, originally you were from California?
excuse me. Yeah, I grew up in Northern California, about 45 minutes east of San Francisco.
Okay, so big change going out to Colorado.
Yeah, I came out here in 2012 for college at CU Boulder.
Oh, okay.
And then I over the course of the 4 years that I was in college here, I met a lot of really good people and kind of formulated a pretty strong community. So by the time I graduated, I was in a relationship, I had a strong community, I had a job in Colorado. So, lots of different factors. And I just love the area too. So lots of factors compelled me to stay. And I was actually just talking with a friend of mine who's visiting from college right now. And it's been almost 9 years. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So you went on your Camino back in, was it 2015? Is that?
Yeah, 2015, exactly.
Okay. So I don't know, even though we've talked a little bit about your Camino, I don't know what motivated you or how you even learned of the Camino. So let's start there. Was there, in your opinion, was there a seed planted or several seeds planted that kind of happened that caused you to go, or was it kind of just something you heard about one night and just on a whim went?
Um, Probably more the first thing. Like lots of different seed, or at least a couple seeds. It really started because my junior year of college at CU Boulder, I I wasn't planning on studying abroad, and I had this. My mom had studied abroad in Spain for a year, and when she was in college, and she had encouraged me, but I wasn't planning on it. And then because one thing led to another, and I decided that I was going to go to study abroad, and decided to go to Madrid as well, like my mom, for 6 months or for the semester. And so when I made that decision, and then she had kind of mentioned the Camino in years past, and then my aunt had also gone and walked the Camino with my cousin. So when I decided I was going to go study abroad in Madrid, um, my mom was like, yeah, you got to do this, you're going to be over there. And I was like, sure, that sounds awesome, I would love to spend some time doing it over there. And so I finished up my semester in college in Madrid, and then I had about a month and a half or so before I was coming back to the States. So I went in, I think, early May, um, and went for, I think it was a 6 week trip. Um, Got to Finisterre like sometime around June 20th or something.
Okay. Oh, almost on the solstice.
Yeah, exactly. And I've stayed in this albergue called Casa del Sol. So
Mhm.
that would have been cool if it was the solstice too. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of the impetus behind going that I can
Uh,
remember at this point. Yeah.
yeah, so kind of a family thing. I didn't realize that your aunt had gone and your cousin. I don't recall that. So yeah.
Yeah.
So because I noticed when we did the interview with your mom and Bob that your Spanish was pretty good. So now that makes sense because you were in Madrid for a semester.
Yeah, it was definitely better then. I lived with a woman from Argentina. She was wonderful, and she spoke no English. So it was great, for me because I wanted to connect with her, and I was in her country, so I wanted to, or not necessarily her country, but I was in the Spanish speaking country and I wanted to learn the language. So it was a lot better then, but just like anything, and not practicing, not using it, it's kind of
Yeah,
faded,
yeah, exactly.
unfortunately.
So what made you pick the Frances? Do you remember? Was it because the aunt had done it, or?
I think so. I think it's just because it's a popular one. Like I didn't really look into a ton of different options.
Yeah.
It
But
was,
you went the whole distance, right? You started in St. John and went all the way to Finisterre, right?
yeah, yeah. Went to Saint John and then went to Finisterre. Yeah, it was
Wow.
really in Finisterre. I don't even know how to say that necessarily. I don't know if it's Finisterre or Finisterre, but
I say it
um,
differently every time, I
the
think.
end of the earth is where I went. But over there, that was when it felt like it really ended. Geographically and um, just in my body and everything. It felt like that was the real end in my heart. It didn't, Santiago was more of like a, I can't think of the word, but it was a tradition in a way,
Mhm, mhm.
and so it felt like that, but it didn't feel like a true completion at that point for me at least.
Yeah.
So it was cool to be able to walk all the way.
Did you know that you were going to go beyond Santiago? Was that always your plan?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure at some point I decided, um, because I didn't have like a real tight schedule. So I did a lot. I was able to like stay in a town overnight if I wanted to, or like, walk extra far, So that to say, I might have decided even on the Camino from talking to people and my own experience, like, okay, I'm definitely going to go to Finisterre. I might not have known that before I went though. I can't remember. I'm glad I did though.
Yeah. So I was thinking the other day, I've interviewed a couple of people and they've recently said all the kind of people you need in your Camino family. And every single time that somebody tells me this, they mention that they wish that they had a musician in their Camino family that they were walking with because they want somebody there with their guitar. They want somebody that can sing and kind of entertain. So
That's fun.
I was thinking about you and I was saying, were you that guy? Did you take your guitar or like when you would get to an albergue, did you like try to find one or did you kind of keep that part of your life more to yourself as you were walking?
I kind of did keep it more to myself. I brought a harmonica just for the
Yeah.
sake of, simplicity, and it was easy to travel with. And I would whip that out if I was walking, if I found myself walking by myself somewhere. Like there's
Mhm.
still a tune that I remember, I would probably remember how to play if I could find my harmonica.
Yeah.
So there, there's like a comforting friend in a way. And then there was a couple hostels I stayed in. There was like one church maybe that had a guitar, and then or one albergue, and then a church that had a guitar. So like I picked it up, and then actually the last place in Finisterre, where I wrote the song that's on your podcast.
Yeah.
I wrote that in Finisterre, and so there was a guitar there, obviously. So I did kind of keep it to myself, but when there's a guitar, I'll pick it
Yeah.
up. But I wasn't, standing on the tables drinking cervezas, playing drinking songs or anything like that. I
Very,
kind of have a quiet part to my personality too, I think, or
yeah.
an introspective part. And I think like that was like more upfront, I guess, for the Camino.
Yeah. So let's jump to the song a little bit and kind of, as you were walking, were you writing songs the whole time or, how did that song come about? Was it once reached the end of the world? Like, how did it come
Yeah.
out?
I think that one came out because I was working on this art project. I had gathered all these pieces of trash in the town called Siu. I
Yeah.
think that's how you say it, like right before. And I don't know if you remember, but the tide for that town, it's like it like pulls out like probably almost 100 yards or something. So then all these people will go in and dig up clams and different things from the town, like townspeople will do that. But
Yeah.
there's all this trash around there, and for some reason I got this idea to like collect all this trash and make an art project out of it.
Yeah.
So I collected all this trash, put it in 2 trash bags with a stick between it, put it on my pack, took it to Finisterre the next day. And then I was working on that working on arranging it in this albergue's little garden area. And then I think I like got up to go to the hardware store, and um, that like melody or that song kind of just came into my mind. And so I knew there was a guitar. So when I got back, I like wrote it on the guitar real quick. It came out kind of fast. It's a simple one.
Yeah. Did you know, I love the words to the song. They really mean a lot to me whenever I listen to it. And like, was that just how you were feeling, just so free in that moment? Like, what do you think was going through your mind when those words came to you?
I was definitely feeling really free for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I just completed my Camino. This art project was like actually turned out really well, and was like a very, you know, I'm a very self-expressive person in any way I can find. And so to be able to put that in, it was like metaphorically, like kind of completing my Camino through this project. And then I also met a woman in Finisterre that I really connected with.
Yeah.
So there were so many things that were just coming to completion or opening. And so I think the song is definitely, you know, a reflection of that.
Mhm. Well, I'm even thinking too, because you had just finished the semester abroad and now you were heading back to the States. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So this was like a huge, you know, like a real journey for you. Like
Right,
you add in the semester away and then all of a sudden now you got to go home. Like,
right.
what did that feel? How did that feel? Knowing that you
Well,
were heading back to the US after this.
well, actually, funny enough, I can't remember how it felt. I think I was pretty um, tied up in the emotions of finishing the Camino, and also like I said, I met a woman that we had this great connection, and so I was sad to leave that. And um, I was probably more concerned with that, not really thinking about how it would be necessarily in the future.
Yeah.
Um, but I also was coming back for my cousin's wedding with like a bunch of my family. And so I kind of, it was almost like, you know, a step in between like being abroad and then being all the way back in Colorado. So I was there for like probably 4 or 5 days, and we had a blast doing that. So I think I was kind of eased into, I
Yeah.
kind of knew I was going home to a warm welcome in that way.
Oh, that must have been, was this the cousin that had walked the
It
Camino?
was coincidentally, yeah, and her
Wow.
mom as well, yeah.
Wow. That's kind of full circle.
It was. Yeah, it was great. It was like perfect timing, and so she could relate, you know. I'm sure. I can't remember. I'm sure we talked about it, but
Okay. So, you know, the romantic in me has to ask. So have you seen this woman since?
no, I think it was just one of those beautiful things that lasted for 3 or 4 days. And you know, we were connected via social media and stuff, like you can be with most people nowadays. But she
Right.
lives in Denmark, so
Oh, wow. Okay. So far away.
yeah.
Yeah. So when you look back on your Camino, what surprised you the most about the actual Camino? And did you find anything that surprised you about yourself as you were walking?
Those are good questions. Um, what surprised me the most about the Camino? Um, I guess like what's coming to mind is the sort of balance that I found necessary between solitude and community.
Hmm.
And I guess in a bigger sense, like the Camino just being this large metaphor for life, you know, like how you walk the Camino is how you walk your life. And
Yeah.
you could say that about a number of things. Like there's so many paths of life, you know, and ways of life. And the Camino could be a way of life for a lot of people, and it is. And I think that was a surprising thing, was just all the little lessons that I feel like I learned
Hmm.
along the way that had like a bigger metaphorical meaning or a symbolic meaning, and or just very tangible, you know, real meaning. Like, you know, it was something I experienced, but I was like in the context of the Camino, it felt like a related to a larger picture. So
Yeah.
I guess I probably like expected maybe some of that, but I was, you know, it's always surprising when life kind of brings those things in front of your face. And then as far as, you know, surprising things about you said like, did I learn anything about myself? Um, yeah. Uh, I guess one thing I learned about myself is like I kind of have a more introverted side than I thought maybe, or
Mhm.
like a serious side.
Yeah.
And I think the mirror of the Camino made that more evident to myself.
I
Um,
bet, yeah.
because I had kind of saw myself as an individual with a personality that was pretty extroverted. And I
Mhm.
definitely utilized that part of my personality, like, to today. And, but like on the Camino, I definitely use that to like meet new people. And at the same time, there was multiple times where, I kind of wanted to do my own thing. And so I guess that kind of surprised me a little bit. It was like, it kind of honestly like it scared, and then I don't know if it scared me, but I was kind of I was unfamiliar with that part of myself. So
Yeah.
it was like it was cool. It was cool to be able to just work with that and see that that's has its own purpose.
That's really interesting, because it sounds like, with you being a performer, right? You sing, you songwrite, you do all this stuff as a musician. You are kind of in a situation a lot of times where I would imagine you are more extroverted. And now here you are walking and you're seeing this side of yourself that, hey, maybe I kind of like taking a step back and walking solo. Like, did you spend some days where you just, or some hours of each day walking a little bit more by yourself than what you had expected?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely walked like a lot by myself.
Yeah.
Like there was multiple whole days I walked by myself. Like probably I can't think now. I would say maybe even half of them I walked by myself. Or um so yeah. And I think that's part of just like performing is part of like the necessity of playing music and things like that. I definitely enjoy the creative part and writing the songs, and playing them for people is really fun too, because the audience, there's like a reciprocity with the energy exchange happening, that makes the songs like come alive in a way that they can't when you're just kind of by yourself. So I think like being able to have both of those qualities is important, and learning how to draw on both of them, like having an inner life and outer life. And I think the Camino just in general kind of allows a container for people to experience that, because you're inevitably with yourself. I mean, you could kind of stay distracted the whole time, but most people are there to like have some movement in their inner life, and also like there's the outer aspect of community and sharing wine and cheese and bread with people. Those are some of my favorite memories of the Camino too. So being able to have a sense of both of those things, I think creates a lot of like a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. That's really well said. I was just thinking, like, did it almost maybe feel like a relief to you that you could be more quiet and more introspective and more on your own than maybe what you felt when you were at university or in your life back in the States at that time?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Like I think it definitely did. I think that sort of introspection, reflection, and ability for insight is something that as human beings, like we have a great capacity for. I think culturally in America, that's not something that's highly valued. It's a very like kind of looking ahead and moving forward and progressing. And there's positives to that as well. Um, but I think that the quieter, introspective, reflective side of myself, and of people in general, hadn't been as developed. And it had for me personally, like a little bit. But yeah, I think for sure it was probably really nice to have that time. And I think I would venture to say that's why I think a lot of people probably like the Camino, is because life is busy and there's a lot of things to tend to, and um, to really take time for ourselves and look at what we really want, and look for answers, maybe not get any answers, but just ask a lot of questions or try to open some doors or close some doors or something. I feel like, that it creates a harmony, I think, or sometimes maybe it doesn't. Maybe it creates a lot of disruption at first, but I think it's what it is it's necessary, for balance.
Yeah,
So
totally agree. So, I'm assuming that you really liked music, everybody's music. Did you have a playlist? Like, did you listen to music or were you a tech-free kind of pilgrim?
I was more of a tech-free kind of pilgrim. I listened to music. I remember listening to music um at least one day. It was raining, and I decided, I was like, I need some inspiration or something. So I listened to some music. I'm trying to think, like, what did I listen to? But I can't remember. And then I might have listened to it like one other day. But I think I like texted my family a couple times. I hope I'm remembering that right. I think I texted them a couple times to let them know I was all right.
Yeah.
But mostly I wasn't on my phone too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you look back now, what would you say was your favorite memory? Like, if you had to go back and go, man, if I could relive this day or this moment on the Camino, I would over and over again.
Hmm. I think like the feeling of walking towards Finisterre like the day before, like or like the day of, actually. The intense anticipation. It was a beautiful day. Um, yeah, and I like was walking towards Finisterre. I found this little beach, and uh no one was there, I don't think. And I just like took all my clothes off and ran into the ocean. And it was the first time I touched water since, I don't know, I hadn't touched the ocean for a long time, but it was so freeing. It was a very liberating feeling. And I could relive that moment for sure. I felt very free and just high on life. Life was very full, and there was a real sense of completion. And um walking into Phoenix Theaters, like, it was interesting too, like even my when I was walking into the when I was there, like my body was like vibrating so much that I only wanted to eat like fruits and like all these very light foods because um there's just so much energy, I think, coursing through me from the trip and everything. So that was cool. I would totally relive that. Phoenix Theater was a wonderful time.
You can really see it in your face as you're talking about it. Like, it just sounded so magical.
Very magical for sure.
Yeah. So on the flip side, what was your hardest day? Like, when you felt like, man, why did did you have a moment where you felt like, why did I do this? I don't even know why I'm here. Did you have a moment like that over the miles, or?
I had this moment where I think it was like I don't know if it was called like Villa Grove or Villa Nova or something, or Via something. It was this mountain town in Galicia. And that day, the next morning, you could choose to walk three different routes from what I remember. There was like easy, medium, difficult. And the difficult one was like this big old like mountain traverse. And for some reason, I was like, I'm going to do that one. So I did that one. I didn't see a single pilgrim the whole day on that route. And it was like through these these valley, you basically like would traverse. It was like three valleys, I think, that I traversed or something. And there was like country people that lived out there. So I saw a couple homes, but then I'd been walking for a while and I got to this one point like down in this valley, and the trail just hit the stream
Yeah.
that was running through. And the snow must have melted differently that year or something, because the trail on the other side wasn't visible. And I was like, it was just like a thicket of trees. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm pretty deep in the mountains here. Like I could technically like walk back from where I came from.
Mhm.
Um, but it wasn't like necessarily a really hard moment, but I guess what it did, it tested my trust. And I think that was a big thing in the Camino, because there was this whole thing of using your heart as a compass and being able to allow that to guide your movements and your movement on the Camino. And it was just a moment of like testing that a little bit, and so for me, I just just took a couple breaths and then just looked around too. I was like, okay, the trail's got to be here somewhere. And after I walked around for a little bit, it like downstream, it was down there, and it had probably just been washed away a little bit. But that was kind of a moment that came to mind, is just those moments of testing the self-trust, I think, you know.
I love the term where you said using your heart as a compass.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, I think, our heart has a lot of wisdom that we can utilize, and the human heart has a lot to teach us. And I think environments like that allow for the opening of that intelligence, because I do think it's a real intelligence at work. And it takes like just tuning in and being with it and trusting that. And we're often very trained to think from our head and you know be very mental and logical about things. And again, that has a function for sure. But I think that the heart has a lot of intelligence as well, and the Camino is definitely a place where I got to explore some of that.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
such a cool story. It's such a cool concept. I mean, here you are, the trail has basically disappeared. You've already walked, I don't know how many miles you'd walked at that point.
A lot. A lot that I didn't want to walk back, for sure.
But really, I mean, you did show a lot of trust in yourself to just start walking down the stream. And then what a relief it must have felt like to find the trail again and know that you weren't going to have to walk back, or you weren't going to have to bushwhack your way to
Yeah.
the town.
Right. And it was kind of like, there wasn't like another Camino or another pilgrim to be like, hey, it's this way. So there was a sense of like self-reliability in a way too. Like I
Mhm.
could essentially like walk up the mountain and go back to people, but it was like, okay, here's a moment to like trust myself and my, where this journey has led me, and move forward. And I think that that's a larger metaphor for a lot of things too, is just those moments where it's like, okay, what do I do here? And then like coming back to, not looking outside oneself and saying, you know, all right, what if I did have the answers, and what would those look like? Or what would I do? And, um, you know, and for that, it was kind of just, it's not like the answer was real complicated. I just had to walk forward, but it was more of the internal experience of relating to those things, which I think is valuable.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not surprised to hear you talk like this, because I think from the moment that I first met you a couple of months ago, I felt that you were very soulful, very heart centered from the moment I met you. And I'm wondering, do you feel like if I would have met you when you were coming out of school in Madrid, would I have maybe sensed that about you? Or did that become heightened during, were you always like this, even as a kid? Or did the Camino help bring this out? Or,
Probably both. I mean, the Camino, I'm sure helped, in ways that I can't even, put words to. Or I remember saying to people after I went, like, that was the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life. So there's no way it couldn't have changed me in that way. I would think of myself as, a person of soul, or someone that's looking for a deeper connection with life. Like, I think I've probably been like that. Definitely as a kid, it's not a conscious thing. So it's hard to say. I guess consciously probably started at a certain age, like when I was in college or something. But I imagine that that's probably been there all along, and the seed just hadn't sprouted yet. And like so many people, I think, looking for a deeper way of relating to life, and then finding some tools and being able to be like, oh, this is what I've been kind of looking for.
yeah. So do you think you'll walk again? Will you ever go back? Or do you feel like I've done it and I'm good?
If you were to ask me now, I would say No, I wouldn't go. Like, I don't have any plans or aspirations. But, you know, if the circumstances changed, say I had kids that wanted to go with me, or, if life brought those circumstances to me, um, then I might say yes to that for sure.
Now, I
Yeah.
know you've talked a lot about the Camino this past, well, probably the past couple of years with your mom writing her book about her
Right.
Camino and whatnot. Do you find yourself talking a lot about your Camino outside of that? Like before that all happened, did you mention it much to people, or has this been just something that was just kind of inside you?
For the first while after I got back, I definitely talked about it because it was so alive in my life, and I was fresh off of it. At this point, it was 6 years ago, and I don't, it's not something that comes up in conversation unless it's specifically about the Camino, like with my mom, or another pilgrim, or if like happenstance some memory like pops into mind, but it's not very often at this point. It's kind of integrated into my life like a lot of other things. Yeah, so, but
So
it's nice, like tonight, it's nice to be able to amplify some of that, wisdom, and think back and bring up those memories. And there's a distillation process that happens with anything. And 6 years, a lot of things distill. So it's kind of cool to see the things that are left for sure.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that so here you are in school in Madrid. I'm imagining you didn't pack a bunch of hiking stuff, or did you?
I packed like hiking shoes. Well, I think I decided before I was going to go to Madrid that I should get some stuff for the Camino.
Okay, okay, good.
Yeah, so I got a couple. I was prepared. I didn't bring a bunch of stuff at all, but
Yeah. Like
yeah.
I'm just imagining you just kind of just taking off and doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened. I did think about it and like get good shoes before I left,
That's right.
Colorado, or I was probably in California at that time, um but I did, I put all my stuff with the woman that I had been staying with in Madrid, and then just brought two changes of clothes, or um yeah, and a sweatshirt, and just simple belongings. But I had planned it before, so.
Okay. So if somebody were asking for advice on what to pack, would you say, when you saw what you took and you looked at other pilgrims that were walking, is there something you tell everyone like, no, you don't need that, but you should take this? What would those things be?
The main thing that I feel like is a necessity that worked for me was, that's just a practical thing, is like making sure you have the right footwear. So I would recommend the shoes that I had, which were um, Morels, I think, the Moab Morels. But then I think I wore like a thin sock, and then with a thick sock over it. But then in the mornings, someone had told me to put like rosemary oil and Vaseline on my feet
Yeah.
so that they didn't blister. And I did that every day, and I didn't get any blisters or have any problems with my feet. So that would be like the main piece of advice I would give, is that worked for me. And if your feet aren't in a good shape, then you're not going to complete it. So you got to prioritize that.
Yeah, I've never heard of doing the rosemary oil with that. I did the Vaseline every morning, but not rosemary oil.
Yeah,
That's
I think it's so they smell good. No, I'm kidding. But I don't know why that is. I honestly didn't ask questions. I was like, all right, it worked. I'm gonna try it out, and it worked for me. So, you know, maybe it wouldn't work for everyone, but I think that for me, yeah. So the rosemary oil and the Vaseline every morning, and then a thin like wool sock, like the really thin ones, and then a thick wool sock over that, and then those shoes, the Moab Morels, those were good. Get a good foundation, and then everything else doesn't really matter after that.
And then what did you see some pilgrims, or what did you take yourself that you're like, that was just, oh, I don't know why anybody would pack that in their backpack, or they should just leave that at home. They're not going to use it.
Um, thankfully I don't think I brought anything like that. Like I brought journals, which I didn't regret. Um, I can't think of something. If anything, I probably brought like too little. You know.
Yeah.
I probably like could have brought like a pair of jeans or something, you know. Um, and then other people, you were saying, did like what ridiculous things did I see other people bring?
Yeah.
Um, man, that's the one I wish I could remember. There's probably some, man, I can't remember. That'd be a good detail to try to call up. What
I
did you see? What kind of weird stuff did you see?
Well, I can just remember seeing people with like ginormous backpacks, and I kept thinking, what in the world do you have in there? Like,
Right.
I couldn't even imagine. But probably like people carrying their own pillows. I just like that's such a big item that's going to take so much space, not necessarily heavy,
Uh-huh.
but it just seemed like such a big thing to take
For
that
sure.
probably that and hair dryers.
That's pretty funny. Yeah,
I get it because I don't know. I don't like to go to bed with wet hair either, but that's a lot to carry.
for sure.
So I don't know. Yeah, I just feel like you can get so many things that you're going to need that you probably don't have to sweat it so much about
Right.
what, unless you're going down one of the lesser known maybe routes, right? That
Yeah.
the Frances now I think it just has a lot of support throughout it, but maybe if you're on one that's not quite so busy, you might really have to think about taking everything. But
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's a ton of things to, I think I got a t-shirt along the way, you know.
yeah,
There's stores I mean, you're going through major cities at certain points, so
all
yeah.
right. Well, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about your music because, after I met you, of course, I searched you on Spotify and started listening to your music. And I just
Thank you.
wondered if, if you could let everybody know, like, I'm thinking how I would describe your music, but, I'm not a music expert. So, what genre would you say, what style, and tell everybody a little bit about your music.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm curious what other people think because I'm influenced by so many things. My first album is kind of like, I would say, more country, western, folk influenced. It's
Mhm.
called Things to Live For, and that one's on Spotify. And then this next album, which doesn't have a title quite yet, um, it still has some of those roots. I think what the common thing, I would call myself a singer songwriter, to put it simply. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that allows me to traverse a lot of different genres. But the new album has a little bit more like, there's even rock influence in there. There's some, it's like Americana, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I'd say singer songwriter. I kind of just write whatever songs that come out of me and don't try to write within a certain lane necessarily. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I could definitely see. I would not have said the word Americana, but now that you say it, I feel that, and I feel like the folk part. And my favorite track from that album is the title song. I
thank
love
you.
that song.
Yeah, that
Um,
was a fun one.
when is your next album? Do you have a release date?
Yes. Well, not an official date, but it's going to be in August,
Oh, wow.
mid-August, I believe. And
Okay.
then I'm releasing the first single from that album. That one's called Two Young Women from Durango. And that one's getting released June 18th. So just in under 2 weeks, and it's going to be available in all the streaming platforms and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of post. I have an Instagram for my music, and I post like updates and stuff for the music. And I'll probably release another single in July, and then the album in August.
Wow. Okay. So here's a thing I have to ask you. So that first album, when did you write your first album? Was that after your Camino, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that was 2009, or what was that? 2019. Yeah.
And then now you got your new one coming out. So is songwriting or doing an album, is it kind of like the Camino, like, kind of like you're going from stage to stage, or is there um, any similarities to the process or anything like that?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. There's a start and finish for one thing, of a process. It's a creative journey in a way. Um, you know, um, there's a self exploration happening. Um, I guess from the time you're writing the songs to when you're putting them out there. I'd say the biggest parallel, I guess, or crossover is the element of the unknown or mystery, because you don't necessarily. I mean, you can write a really focused song, but what I like about poetry or songwriting is being surprised by the things that I write, or having a melody or like words take me in a certain direction that was totally unexpected. And that component, I think, transfers over to the Camino. I think there's a similar element in both of those, where you kind of have to trust the process. So I'd say that trusting the process is probably the where those two meet, and come together.
Wow. That sounds so amazing. I wish I had this creative side of me. Like I can't even imagine what that must feel like to just have a song just come to you.
Well, I feel like, we're all creative beings, and we express our creativity in different ways. Like you're doing this podcast, which is such a creative endeavor. And for me, it just happened to have been music, but yeah, that creativity, just like I'm sure here, like you ask questions that stimulate answers in people that they never had thought of or that you never had thought of. And that I think that unknown component is the essential element of a really rich creative process. And we all have access to that, whether it's through conversation or through the work we do, or whether we're actually an artist. Um, and I think that makes, it makes me feel, and I think I could say us feel really alive, because there's this element of like we're creating something that wasn't there before out of nothing. um, and sometimes we have, our brushes or our tools that help us, but I think that part's really fun, and I think it's accessible to all of us too, which is pretty fun to think about too.
Wow, thank you for saying it that way. You've really made me think about some things because I that's always something I've been attracted to in any kind of work that I do, right? Is I have to have that element of creating something. And my creations are never as artistic, in an artistical sense, but that element is so important to me in whatever I do. Like if it doesn't have that, like if I were to own a franchise or something, like I would not be fulfilled because I would just be doing somebody else's set plan, if that makes
Right.
sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I totally can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanting to influence something and like birth something, give it life, I think that that's a inherently creative, drive,
So I am creative. No.
For sure, definitely. I think
So,
so.
so it's two young women from Durango.
And didn't you say you're a yoga teacher too?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's no way that you're not, you have to create classes and you have to listen to the students. I mean, that's a huge creative process. So
Exactly. That's my favorite part. I love creating the sequences, right?
yeah,
Um,
so yeah, it's called Two Young Women from Durango. Exactly.
what inspired this song?
Well, two young women from Durango inspired that song, and it's one of those songs that really speaks for itself. It really explains itself too. That one was, I guess, it did come out real quick and kind of surprised me, but it doesn't. There's not a whole lot of mystery behind the words themselves. They kind of are pretty,
Yeah.
straight and facing forward. Um, so yeah, it turned out to be. Well, yeah, I'll let people make their own impression of it.
All right. So this last album, or the album you're getting ready to release, um, is this all music that kind of happened during the pandemic?
Um, no. Some of them, some of the songs happened during the pandemic. I would say, kind of trying to think, like, it's a good question. I actually hadn't thought about that. I know that one wasn't, but the other five might have been all during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Because
kind of cool to think about.
yeah, I wondered what. going through the pandemic, I've heard from some creative people that the pandemic, they just kind of shut down, and that now that things are getting better, they're kind of feeling stuff come out, which is really interesting because now you're getting ready to release this album as the world is reopening.
Right.
Kind of interesting, right? And
Totally.
um, so do you think that the pandemic had some influence over some of the songs that you have on this, or was it just that you had more time to sit down and write? Like, why did why did this album come to be?
Yeah, see, you're definitely a creative person. You just made me think about something that I had never thought about.
What's
Well, no, I just hadn't thought about it in the context of the pandemic. I'm sure it had an influence on the songs. I was like trying to think in my mind, I didn't really write like pandemics. I wrote like a couple funny blues songs or something about like the pandemic blues, but like, I don't know, it's kind of got like cheesy after a while or something, just like writing about it so directly, But for me, like, it was like we're all pushed in our houses, all this energy is pushed inside, we're all like pushed internally in a way. Um, for me, that was like kind of exciting at first because like I broke out my camera and started, yeah, I started doing different creative projects. Um, and then that was kind of like, but then like the novelty of the pandemic wore off. Not that it was like this wonderful new thing, but like just the newness of it wore off, and that like initial like, oh, what's going to happen? And we kind of settled into it. And, then I wasn't like doing anything, necessarily creative, but I think the songs probably, I should have listened back with that lens, like they must have been influenced in some way. But I think more so, I guess, in terms of like the actual pandemic material being in the songs, I think it just stimulated the creative part in me to be more disciplined and just really utilize the time indoors and just in general, like with things being kind of introverted in a way collectively, and to just, I just spent a lot of time writing and creating, whether it was, music or poetry or other stuff. So I think in that way, the pandemic definitely had an influence on my creative process as a whole.
Yeah, very interesting. So that song comes out on June 18th. That's really soon.
Yeah, super soon. I'm very excited about it, and I had some great musicians play on that song, and another folk singer from Denver. She did some background vocals, and her name's Ellsworth. She goes by Ellsworth. And then my really good friend helped produce the track and design the artwork. So we're excited to, like you said, after all this time, it's really nice to release something out into the world.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I
Yeah.
can't wait to listen to it. So that will be on Spotify for sure. Anywhere else if people want to listen to it.
Yeah, Spotify should be on Apple Music, YouTube Music, I think is a thing. Any major streaming platform
Okay.
it'll be on. And then, like I said on my Instagram, I'll like post if there are other places, I'll probably post where those are so people can find it and have access wherever they are.
Okay. And I'll make sure to have in the show notes. Well, I always have in the show notes a link to Spotify for you, but I'll also make sure that I include the link to your Instagram page, so that way people can follow you on Instagram and
Cool. That'd be awesome.
hear when the music's coming out and whatever. And so I wanted to circle back to the Camino because I know a lot of people that are watching this are going to be very inspired after hearing about your Camino. If you were to, if we were out to dinner somewhere and somebody was overhearing our conversation and they said, yeah, I've been thinking about going, but I don't know. What would you say to them that like, no, you really should go. Here's why.
Um, yeah, I mean, to be honest, the answer is I don't know what I would say necessarily. It'd probably be a contextual answer based on their like specific like setbacks or hesitations or something. But I'd probably try to share some um, powerful experience, or just like with anything really, I would just, if someone's like on the brink of doing something that I know would be really good for them and for their life and for the lives of the people around them, like I would totally encourage that in any way I could. I'd come from any angle that I needed to, really. If I really saw that, it'd be really good for somebody, and just encourage them, like, and try to open the door and invite them into an experience of what they could experience, so they could, maybe have a little bit of a feeling of that, and then, want to take that for themselves and make something, um, for their own life. And sometimes, with that stuff, maybe some people don't go for a couple years, and they're like, something happens in their life and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that conversation and I'm going to go do that thing. So I would try to plant those seeds.
Well, I kind of feel like you did that with your mom, like when I was interviewing her and you and Bob on several episodes back. Um, you were so supportive of your mom, but I feel like it was in such a quiet way. It was in such a, like, not forcing it upon her. I mean, I know she kind of had it in her back of her mind as well, but I can't help but to think the fact that you did it in 2015, and her seeing the way that you transformed and the things that it did for you had to have a big influence on her. And then the fact that you gave her that David White poem, which became a really big magical moment for her during her Camino. And then the poem you wrote for her while she was walking. Um,
Hmm.
so I really do see you as kind of being that person that would be inspiring in a way that would really support someone. Like, it wouldn't be like forcing it down their mouth, it would be in this way of like just kind of gently nudging them to go and
Yeah.
do it.
I think that's all, I really have the power to do. And that a lot of us really only, have the power to do is encourage the life in somebody. Like if it's moving in a direction that looks really good, then trying to help guide that person towards it so that they can have their own experience. And the hard part is that people don't always listen. I mean, I can't tell you how many times my parents tried to do that for me and I didn't, listen to that. And that's got to be, it's hard on that end, but I think that's all we can really do. And so, yeah, I definitely try to do that, especially, when my mom wanted to. I was like, she was the one that kind of had planted the seed anyway and been so encouraging for me. So I wanted her to have that experience for herself, for sure.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to leave out your dad because he also went and walked, at the end of her Frances, and so I think he had his own Camino as well.
For
And I don't,
sure.
your brother and sister now, they haven't gone yet, have they?
No, they have not gone. And my dad, like, it was really my mom's thing. Like he did it to, similarly to like support my mom in her thing. And he just kind of went along and encouraged her and supported her. And of course he had his own experience, but he didn't go there for himself
Yeah,
necessarily. So
yeah. Mhm. So cool. Well, I'm telling you, I am so excited that you have new music coming out. That is
yeah,
really
I would be happy to play the song if you'd
well.
like
I
to hear.
wanted to ask, but I
Okay.
didn't want to put
Yeah.
you on the spot. But yeah, I would love nothing more than to hear something. What are we gonna hear?
I'll how about that new song?
Oh, perfect. So,
Um,
two young women from Durango.
Two Young Women from Durango.
Wonderful. So coming out June 18th, and I'll tell you what, we'll have you sing it, and once you're done, we'll close out our interview. And so I just want to tell everyone, first of all, Jackson, thank you for coming tonight and being a part of the Camino Cafe again. I can't tell you how honored I am, and I hope you know how grateful I am that you're allowing me to use your song as our intro song. It means a lot to have a song that was inspired by the Camino, that was written and performed by somebody that's a pilgrim. So I'm really touched by it. So thank you for allowing that to happen.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for having me on your show, and it's been super good talking with you. And thanks for, opening the door to the Camino after all these years. It's not like it's been that long, but I really appreciate being able to dive back into that world because it's such a wonderful world.
It is. Well, thank you. And I'll be sure to have links, everybody, to Jackson's music. And we'll be looking forward to his first release on June 18th and the next one in July, and then the full album. So we'll let Jackson close us out with this next original song. So thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Yeah, thank you, Leigh. All right, so this one's called Two Young Women from Durango. And can you hear that all right?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. I'll just make sure, I should have done this beforehand, but it'd be terrible to play the new song out of tune. Especially for all those Camino musicians that were the ones that were the musician of their group. All right. I fell in love with two young women from Durango. Black shining hair they had with eyes of crystal jade. I tried to catch 'em, they moved fast as jazz and Django. But in their namesake a promise I've made. When I grow older, I'm gonna marry Colorado. Her rolling grasses are like long legs in the wind. Her mountains high enough to reach for El Dorado, and her waters pure, blue azure, I'm standing in. Life and love are far too wild just to ponder. Let us keep laughing so those wildflowers bloom. I still know nothing, for as far as I have wandered, and with what will come of me, there is one thing I'll presume. When I grow older, I'm gonna marry Colorado. Her rolling grasses are like long legs in the wind, and her mountains high enough to reach for El Dorado, and her waters pure, blue azure, I'm standing in. I've dated ladies here whose nature I can't capture. They're brimming beauties made by a greater hand. They filled my heart with both mystery and rapture, and they shaped my soul to fit the molding of this land. When I grow older, I'm gonna marry Colorado. Her rolling grasses are like long legs in the wind, and her mountains high enough to reach for El Dorado, and her waters pure, blue azure, I'm standing in. with two young women from Durango.
Oh, that was fantastic. Everyone,
Thank you.
Pilgrim singer-songwriter Jackson Maloney. You can find him on Spotify, and that song's going to be released soon. We all just got a preview, which is awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you
much.
for the opportunity, Leigh, to play some music, and thank you so much for having me on here. It's been so wonderful to chat with you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. Thank you, everyone. Please check out Jackson's music. I know you will after hearing that. Take care, everyone. Bon Camino.